evening, everybody. It's Kalini Kent here, and I've got in the studio with me the lovely Irene Wignall again this week. Hello, Irene.
Hi, Kalini. Are you okay?
Yes, thank you, darling. What we're going to be talking about tonight, everyone, is quite an important topic because this week it is Alcohol Awareness Week. And in fact, what they're doing this week as well is highlighting the importance of the impact of alcohol on mental health. And I've actually asked Irene particularly to join me tonight because very often what happens is people do have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and Irene's going to actually share her story because she's actually had this experience herself, and it's going to be quite good for her to, and quite brave obviously of her to actually share her own particular story and how she has overcome the difficulties. Please can I just remind you that we welcome any comments or any questions, and if anybody would like to put any comments in and just let us know you're listening, that'll be wonderful. If you want your name to show, you do need to give StreamYard permission, but thank you very much for joining us. So Irene, you were obviously saying that you've had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd like to call it an unhappy relationship with alcohol. So when I was younger, I partied hard and I worked hard, and it was great. I had a great life. I was young, free and single, and everything was great. Although I didn't have a cut-off point. I never had a cut-off point. So I would, I suppose, class myself as a binge drinker. So if I obviously worked shifts, and so my weekends would be like a Tuesday and Wednesday. So we go out on Tuesday and Wednesday, and I wouldn't know when to stop. But then the rest of the week I wouldn't drink. So I didn't see anything wrong with that. Life went on. Got married, settled down, I suppose, and had my first little boy, and then went on to have a little boy who was stillborn. And at the time then, alcohol became my crux. So it became acceptable to drink in the house. I drank wine, and it just basically numbed the pain at the time. And I didn't realise that numbing the pain didn't mean it went away. It might have gone away for that night, but you wake up the next morning and it's back again. And I didn't realise at the time numbing it didn't mean I didn't have to go through it. So I decided in 2018 that I didn't like the relationship I had with alcohol. I'd got into a bad habit of drinking in the house. Obviously, I was working. I had 2 boys at this stage now, and on the face of it, everything was great. But my weekends were sort of a bit foggy. I weren't at 100%. I was tired. I was lethargic. I was anxious. And I didn't at the time put it down to alcohol. I put it down to all the things that I've been through. And then in December, I started looking at different sites, reading different books about giving up alcohol, and decided on New Year's Eve then that was the time I was going to give up. And I had my last drink at 10 o'clock on New Year's Eve, and I basically drank it because it was there. I didn't particularly want it, and I've never had another drink since. So yeah, so quite pleased with myself.
So, I mean, that's amazing for you to admit that, and that's brilliant. Can I just say, Emily's here, listening here, and thank you very much. Lovely to see you, Emily. Lovely to, I haven't spoken to you for ages. We must have a good catch up, my dear. It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously some people do use alcohol to numb pain or numb grief, and I think it has been acknowledged that there has been an increase in alcoholism, or people certainly depending on it, or just drinking socially because of boredom during COVID. I think that's become quite apparent, hasn't it? I don't know if you.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I've got some figures here. I've got some figures here, statistics like every day, 20 people die as a result of their drinking. It's not inevitable, but it can be actually, something. And in fact, I've got some more figures here. 5 in 10. Over half of drinkers, 53%, said they have drunk alcohol for a mental health reason. So sometimes it can be used as a numbing effect or just because they're struggling. 1 in 3 drinkers, 29%, have been drinking at increasing or higher risk levels. And 4 in 10, drinking's worsen mental well-being for 4 out of 10 people. So there is a direct causal link as well between alcohol and mental health. I mean, is there anything you can add to that?
Yeah, I think initially I drank for confidence, you know, going out. I didn't feel that confident. Have a couple of glasses of wine before we went out, and it gave me confidence. But what I've realised since giving up is that the confidence I've gained in the last 2 years has been immense in relation to what a glass of wine confidence will give me for 10 minutes. And I do think the after effects of alcohol the next day and the anxiety, and a lot of people just put it down to anxiety and don't correlate the two, that is the alcohol, because the alcohol does give you a big dip the next day, and it causes depression and it causes anxiety. And I think people don't want to admit it's the alcohol that's causing it, but definitely my anxiety and low mood stopped when I gave up drinking. Not like immediately, but as the effects happened, then yeah, it definitely made a difference to my mental well-being.
And I think during lockdown as well, I mean, I think at the beginning of the crisis, there was a lot of media coverage, and it was done in a sort of tongue-in-cheek way, but there was a lot of media coverage of people rushing to the supermarket to buy alcohol and stock up on it. And then obviously the government were also permitting off licenses and shops to sell alcohol, which sold alcohol to stay open. But I think there have been a lot of stresses and strains. So I think there is this tendency, isn't there, to actually, you know, maybe drink. And, you know, I love a drink. You know, we all, you know, I drink alcohol. Can I just share this actually? This subject is very raw. A family member is very sick. She suffers with an alcohol-induced paranoia and schizophrenic episodes. Thank you for sharing that. I'm not sure who this is, but doesn't matter if you want to stay anonymous. But thank you very much for sharing that. I know sometimes some of the topics we talk about, they are raw, and I hope that's okay for you. And if you do need to reach out to us and talk to us afterwards, please feel free to do so, because I'm at the end of, you know, you can send me a message if afterwards if you need some support. But, you know, I think it's just good that for us to sort of raise awareness. And, you know, I think also, you know, there are solutions though. So how did you overcome your challenges, Irene?
I suppose I have about 10 top tips that I would often look at, and I read a lot of they call it quit lit, so it's alcohol, giving up alcohol books, and I read loads of books about it from different people's perspective, which was good as well. And once you start reading, you start thinking, oh my God, that's me. You know, you see the common themes running through it, like waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, anxious and thinking, right, tonight I won't have a glass of wine, I won't have a bottle of wine. And it's just the same cycle. And what else did I do? I made sure that I didn't have to go to the shop on the way home from work, because they have a thing, they call a thing called a wine witch. And it's that voice in your head after you finished a hard day at work, or even a good day, that you've got that voice in your head saying, oh, celebrate with a glass of wine, or commiserate with a glass of wine. A glass of wine will make you feel better. And if you're going to the shop on the way home, that's quite hard to fight that, especially if you're tired. And what else did I do? I meditated. I went to bed early initially, and I also substituted drinks. If I were going to, say, my family's, and everybody were bringing a bottle of wine, I'd take a bottle of alcohol-free wine, and I think that's more for the other person as people as for me. It just felt like I was being included, and people didn't really think that I was the sober one in the group, if you know what I mean. Because I think even me years ago, if somebody had been sober in my company and I'd been drinking, I wouldn't have gone and spoke to that person. I just probably would have stayed clear of them. So there's a bit of a stigma attached to being sober as well.
I think also, I mean, I was going to touch on a couple of things here, because I think sometimes people don't actually know what is the safe amount to drink. Knowing how much to drink, it can be confusing, I think. And also sometimes when you pour a glass of wine, is it 1 or is it 2 units? Sometimes if you've got a large glass of wine, it's really difficult to tell, because I'm a gin and tonic person, but I also like a bit of wine and Prosecco. And sometimes drinks can be very, very easy to drink, can't they? Yeah. And so So, I mean, and the other thing as well is that there are some guidelines which I've been sort of wanting to share with everybody, you know, in terms of tips for cutting down. So I think one of them is you can actually get this app, or in fact, I can share the link in the chat, which actually shows you what alcohol units are in each drink, so that you can actually see and measure it yourself, and you can roughly know. But one of the tips they do say is the UK chief medical officers and top doctors recommend not drinking more than 14 units a week. And I think sometimes it's difficult because I don't know what pint, you know, a pint of beer would probably, you know, have more than one of you, 2 units. I don't drink beer, so I don't know. I'd need to look it up. But you need to drink ideally no more than 14 units a week. And I think it's quite easy if you're going out. You could easily cover that in one night.
Yeah.
That means 6. In fact, it tells you here 6 pints of lager or a bottle and a half of wine. So it sounds like a pint of lager has got 2 units in it. And so a bottle and a half of wine. So that's in 1 week, ideally. And then they also suggest that you should space that over a few days, so that ideally don't drink it all in one night. It's better to drink it over, say, 3 and have maybe a glass of wine every night or every other night, whatever. Yeah. I think the other recommendation is to actually have alcohol-free days, so that you actually have days if you where you actually will just sort of just not drink at all, so your body doesn't then get used to having it every day. I have to say, we used to have a box of, you know, like one of these bottles, you know, we've always got a bottle of wine on the go, and it is quite tempting to just every evening just have a quick glass of wine. And
I think like at the beginning of lockdown, people sort of saw it as a holiday season because it was sunny outside, kids were at home, people were furloughed, people were working from home. And I think like I would never have a drink before 7 o'clock of a night time and put the kids to bed, and then that'd be, yeah, I could have a glass of wine. But I think over lockdown, that time, there was no sort of time constraints, and that time became earlier and earlier for people. And people who wouldn't normally drink in the house as well started drinking in the house. And I think it's just a really bad habit to form and hard to get out of.
Do you miss it at all?
Sometimes I miss it. Like I've nearly done 2 years now without having a drink, and at the beginning of the lockdown, it looked appealing to me. You know, even I thought I'd love to sit in my back garden, like have a barbecue, have a glass of wine. But once I get my glass of, there's a bottle called Prosecco. Once I get a bottle of a glass of Prosecco, it just doesn't. It wears off straight away, and I'm quite happy that I haven't had a drink. And I remember going to a wedding once, and I felt quite boring, I suppose. Me and Adam were at this wedding, and everybody was having a drink and everybody was dancing, and I was quite jealous. And then within about an hour and a half, people were falling. A girl fell asleep at the table, a girl had to get carried out, and I thought, no, I'm doing the right thing here, because that would have been me, because I've got no cut-off point. So yeah, you do get the odd moment where you think, it does look appealing, but then once it's over and done with, and you've got your glass of wine, and you wake up fresh, then you've got your glass of non-alcoholic wine, and then you wake up fresh the next day. It's you feel so much better for it.
Well, actually, during lockdown, what I decided to do was take the opportunity. I think this is actually about what it's about. I think sometimes we do things for social reasons, and social pressures are there. So, for example, if I went on a networking meeting and I met up with people, you order the lovely vanilla latte, because you can do. Then you're in a place where you can have it. Similarly, things like I would, if somebody else was drinking a bottle of wine or a glass of Prosecco, I'd have it. I love the no secco thing, by the way. I'm a Prosecco person, and gin and tonic. So I think there is the temptation, isn't there, to actually have a glass. But I've actually, for about 3-4 months, I didn't drink at all, and I did notice the difference, because there is all of the hidden sugars in it, and I've lost about sort of 8-9 kilograms, because you do have that. There's that sort of the taste and flavour and everything. It's just
yeah, I know. It's like my skin went clearer, my eyes went brighter, and initially I didn't lose any weight because I didn't realise I had a sweet tooth, but obviously the wine was giving me the sugar, and I started eating toffees, and I never eat toffees and sweets. And even though my weight didn't change in the first say 6 months, my body shape changed, so I looked slimmer. So I felt great. The confidence that I got through people saying, "Oh my God, you look great," was just really good. It was really nice.
That's one bonus as well. And the other couple of suggestions as well it recommends is things like keeping a drinking diary for a few weeks will help you understand your drinking pattern. Because I think, you know, it's like sometimes if you go to the doctor and they ask you, oh, how many units a week do you have? I find it really difficult sometimes to answer, because there might be the occasional, if you go out with friends and you have a good night out, you probably could drink maybe the equivalent of a bottle of wine in an evening, but then also on other evenings you don't drink at all. So, and you know, particularly with lockdown, you know, not been going out at all. So it's been interesting actually. So that's what they suggest. There's an app called Try Dry app. Again, I can leave these links in the chat, everyone. A Try Dry app, which helps you keep track of the alcohol that you're doing. And then the other suggestions, of which are what you've touched on as well, is try drinking low alcohol and alcohol-free drinks. So I suppose the impact of that is it's getting your body not used to that sort of the feeling of having had the alcohol, isn't it? Is that what it does? I mean,
yeah, I think if you are an alcoholic, then they don't recommend you go to alcohol-free drinks and low alcohol drinks because you're maintaining that habit and that routine. So, but if you wanted to cut down and just have a look at your alcohol, because the low alcohol drinks have got the same amount of alcohol in that there is in medicine, so it really isn't enough to give you any sort of false feelings, or you're still actually coping with real life and it's not faking it for you, but it gives you the taste. I have low alcohol gin and tonics, which are quite nice. Yeah, from Tesco's. So
okay, I must try that.
Yeah, and it just, I think it just takes the edge off, you know, where you think, oh, I fancy a drink, and you just have something like that, and you think, actually, I don't. This is fine.
Yeah. Another recommendation actually is the fact that apparently you should eat before and while you drink. Yeah. Because having something to eat, you know, while you're drinking, it slows down the assimilation of the alcohol into your bloodstream. So, you know, like obviously if you drink on an empty stomach, that's why, you know, before you eat, like you have an aperitif, it just all goes to your head, doesn't it? Whereas if you've actually had something to eat, it's actually going to be absorbed, or less is absorbed, or certainly more slowly. So I think that's another tip, isn't it?
Yeah. I think you're fuller, so you can't physically, if you went for a meal, I could never have a big night out and go for a meal at the same night. It'd have to be two different sort of events. If I went for a meal, it wouldn't be a big drinking session at all, because there's basically no room for it.
So can we just touch on also, you know, the impact that thank you, Paul. This is a friend of ours, Paul. He actually has bought your book, Irene. I look for the F and Rainbow.
Oh.
So, you know, in terms of like alcohol and sleep, some people think, you know, sort of like you're falling into bed and, you know, you're going to sleep well. But actually, there's research to show that actually you're not getting as effective a night's sleep when you've got, it's alcohol induced, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a terrible night's sleep. You think it'll knock you out basically, but you'll notice when you actually do, if you do give up alcohol, the sleep is amazing in comparison to what you used to have, and you wake up refreshed as well. You don't wake up with an anxiety or beer fear or looking at social media to see what you might have posted the night before. So yeah, the sleep is far better without alcohol in your system.
Well, I was reading about this, and what basically it was actually saying is that when you've had a lot of alcohol before you go to sleep, what happens is it actually leads to being dehydrated. So you're sweating more, your body is sweating more. And that's why when you're very drunk, if you drink a lot, that's why they sort of say you can see people walking around with hardly anything outside because they don't feel the cold. And so you're sweating more, and then it means then that you're not actually feeling you're dehydrated in the morning. So and you've also more visits to the loo and everything, but it's supposed to actually impede the effective sleep patterns, isn't it? And it also apparently causes you to snore more.
All right, and you can see that actually. You can see, like, if Adam's not a big drinker at all, but on the rare occasion that he might go out with his mates and have a drink, he is horrendous snoring. I can't believe that.
And I think, we don't want to go into, but they also say that alcohol has got a link with dementia. I think there's, but I think that's obviously, we're talking about long-term heavy drinking here. If people have got, long-term heavy and it's repeated and time after time, but we don't want it to be all doom and gloom, because we do know that there are methods of recovery if people, and I think most people, it's enjoyable. I like to have a drink. I think it's just probably what's good is that it's the recognizing that it's becoming a little bit more of a dependency. Is that what the issue is, really, Irene?
Yeah, I think so. When you start to notice, and not in a good way, that every sort of celebration or commiseration or bad day, good day ends with a glass of wine, and that's when I think you start thinking maybe I'm drinking a little bit too much.
Yeah.
A lot of people you see especially women my age and maybe a bit younger, who have got young families, and see on social media, mummy needs wine and mummy needs gin. So it just seems like it's acceptable. And if you said if somebody was a drug addict said to you, I've given up heroin, you won't say, oh, go on, just have one more, but you'd say that to somebody who decided not to have a drink. It'd be like, oh, go on, but you never say it to a drug addict.
No. So I think what we just to round things up then, I think what we wanted to say is that, we're not, by the way, we're not being judgmental at all. I have a drink. We're not saying you shouldn't be drinking. Everybody likes your drink and stuff. I think it's really what we're highlighting is that many of us drink a lot more without realizing it. And I think certainly alcohol consumption has gone up during COVID, which is quite understandable in a lot of the stressful cases people have had. But there is, it's basically, it's the thing that they're concerned about in terms of mental health is the overuse of it. And where it becomes something where, it can lead obviously long term to things like liver damage and so on. But I think the most important thing is just there is a quiz actually. And in fact, I'll share it on this website. It's called alcoholchange.org.uk. And it's great because there's a drinking quiz in which I might have a look at it and see what it says. But I think it's really brave of you. And thank you so much for sharing what you've, the experience that you've had with it. But it just goes to show that, it's easy to overcome these challenges, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there are loads of groups out there, like Be Sober Bolton, Sober Sisters. There's loads. If you go on social media, there's loads of groups that would be there to support you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Alcoholics Anonymous, there's loads of other different groups.
And I think that it's important that people don't see it as like a stigma, just like, we talk about mental health a lot more. I just think it's nice in these chats I'm having is just to sort of highlight things that might be a challenge for people. Doesn't mean that it might apply to you, might not, it might do. Yeah. But if we can help in any way, that's what it's all about. And, reach out for some help. That's the other main message is that, there are, become just more aware. And it's about reaching out for support and help. And there is help. So as you said, it's not having to go to an AA meeting or anything like that. It can be quite supportive and anonymously so as well, can't it?
Yeah, and in our event, our Be Sober events, we do events that you would normally not even do. So we've done paddleboarding, we've done axe throwing, things that are just a bit different. So life is still fun, but without the alcohol.
And I just wanted to touch on, we've covered quite a few things tonight, which are, like you said, it's affected your confidence, didn't it? And they're all topics which are my passion project, which because I've got my Power of 5, which is all about your confidence, resilience, your mindset, communication, and you think you said it affected your confidence, didn't it?
Yeah, and it's funny because that's why I initially started having a drink for my confidence, and it all has a knock-on effect, and I just realized I had no confidence whatsoever, and I didn't know who I was, you know, my real personality on a night out. I didn't know what that was, and as soon as I gave up, I've done things in these last 2 years that I never would have dreamed of doing.
Yeah.
This is one of them. I would never have dreamed of coming on chatting on live. But yeah, once you get rid of it, you can regain confidence.
And then I think we've touched on also your resilience, haven't we? Because resilience comes into it, isn't it? Because you've had to sort of face up to the challenges that you were facing at the time, and then you've obviously had to be resilient anyway because of the, like, you know, for those of you who don't know Irene, she had a stillbirth and then she also had a brain tumour, so you've had more trauma than a lot of people in a 10-year span, and so, but then you actually had this as well to manage. So in terms of resilience, do you want to add anything at all about that?
I just think I didn't know how resilient I could be until I was actually in it and I was dealing with it. I wasn't having a drink to mask it, and I do actually think I'm quite resilient. And you know, you just don't realise whilst you're masking it all. And we all can be amazing. You know, we've all got it in us. Resilience. It's just sort of coaxing it out and feeling it and going through it.
And I think that's why I always talk about resilience, mindset and confidence together, because it's also about your mindset, about how you approach a situation and how you give yourself the strength to actually, you are believing in yourself, you're confident enough in yourself, and it's a mindset thing as well, sometimes reframing a situation. But we won't go into too much depth of that because we're on to another topic there. But thank you so much. Nice to have you here again. Please do remember, anybody, if there is anything that's cropped up tonight and you want to ask me about it or talk about it, please make contact. I've also got, so I'm streaming tonight onto my profile, but also into the Inspirational Women of the World group. Thank you, Tracy and Dawn. I'm also streaming into my group tonight, and please do join that because I'm going to be sharing a lot of stuff on confidence, resilience, mindset, communication skills, purpose, and it's Kalini Kent, the Power of 5. So please do join me in that group, and it'll be lovely because I'll be sharing lots of snippets, and we'll be streaming these into the group every day. Thank you so much, everyone. And if you have any questions afterwards, we will answer them in the chat. Take care and have a lovely evening. And thanks again, Irene. Take care, everyone.
Bye.